Danny was just 7 years old, an adventurous spirit with a penchant for wandering off the beaten path. One chilly autumn evening, during a family trip to the countryside, he found himself entranced by the glow of fireflies and the whisper of the wind, which led him away from his parents' side. As he stepped deeper into the forest, the sky darkened, and the trees grew thicker and more twisted, forming ominous shapes that seemed to guide Danny further into their grasp. The once gentle rustle of leaves turned into an unsettling symphony, accompanied by distant howls and the occasional flurry of glowing eyes peeking through the underbrush. Each snap of a twig underfoot echoed like a gunshot in the still, dense air. The moonlight, sparse and fragmented through the heavy canopy, cast eerie shadows that danced around him, morphing into grotesque figures that taunted him at every turn. He called out for his parents, but his voice was swallowed by the oppressive darkness. Meanwhile, his parents, filled with dread, realized Danny was missing. The forest, which had seemed like a quaint backdrop for a family outing, transformed into a labyrinth of nightmarish proportions. Desperation set in as they plunged into its depths, their flashlights barely piercing the fog that slithered along the ground. Every step seemed to bring new terrors, shadowy forms that flickered just out of sight, branches that clawed at their clothing, and whispers carried by sudden gusts of icy wind. The parents' hearts pounded with a rhythm of urgency and fear, their calls for Danny mingling with the sinister chorus of the night. With every passing minute, the forest seemed to constrict around them, a living entity feeding off their anxiety. Danny, driven by an innate will to survive, pushed forward, his small frame navigating through the thick underbrush. His breaths were shallow and quick, his eyes wide with terror and determination. He stumbled upon a narrow, winding path where the trees seemed to part just enough to let the moon's beams create a silvered lifeline. Following it, he found a small clearing and, huddled beneath an ancient oak tree, waited, praying for a sign of his parents. The night stretched on, an eternal torment, until the first light of dawn began to break. The parents, now worn and weary, but fueled by hope, finally stumbled into the clearing where Danny lay nestled in the roots of the oak. Tears streamed down their faces as they embraced him, vowing never to let him out of their sight again. The forest, having relinquished its grip, stood silent and still, as if satisfied with the terror it had wrought. They made their way back, the sunlight dispelling the night's horrors, but the memory of that eerie forest would forever linger in their hearts.